Hello, dear friends. I don't like to give bad news, but this apocalyptic topic has caught my attention. Opinion piece. Hangar Stones. If you see me, weep, says one. It's the west draft indicates. They point to the low water level. Whoever saw me wept, says another. But life will bloom again. Salman Rushdie, to lose an eye. Harry Potter, author and the threat. Religious takes center stage in US politics. Uri Geller creates the world's youngest nation. Kissinger says we are on the brink of war. Let's start. Europe's record drought this summer has caused river levels to drop so sharply that centuries-old cairns or carved stone posts used to mark the water level of torrents have been exposed with warnings of hard times ahead. Europe is suffering its worst drought in decades, marked by massive forest fires, reduced water in rivers and lakes, and a threat to agriculture. A famine stone is a type of water level marker common in Central Europe. Famine stones served as signs in times of drought and as a warning of famine, and were erected in Germany at German populated sites throughout Europe between the 15th and 19th centuries. Last week, the Rhine's water level dropped by 7 centimeters. A few days later, it dropped by as much as 36 centimeters in a single day. The severe drought has exposed the mysterious Hangar Stones on Hangar Steine, a German term for rocks that were engraved with messages in ancient times. Hangar Stones have been used for centuries, particularly to mark historical drafts and to alert the population of their consequences. Several of these stones are also embedded in the Elbe River, which runs from the mountains of the Czech Republic through part of Germany to the North Sea. A famous example is found in the Elbe River, Czech Republic, where a stone is engraved with the warning, "If you see me, weep." Some of the stones, which are again visible in the dry riverbed, bear messages dating back to the 17th century. The warnings carved on them have a discouraging message. In quotes, "He who saw me wept. He who sees me will weep. Life will flourish again once this stone disappears," are some of the other messages. Others bear dates of 2002 or 2018, referring to the last times the water level dropped so low that they became visible again. However, there are marks dating back even centuries. Some of the oldest have illegible inscriptions and date from 1417 and 1473. These stones were embedded in a riverbed during drought to mark the water level as a warning to future generations that they will have to endure hardship related to famine if the water dropped to this level again. Many of these stones, with carvings on or other works of art, were erected after the famine of 1816-1817, caused by the eruption of the Tambora volcano in 1815 that resulted in the year without a summer. In 1918, a famine stone in the bed of the river Elbe near Dethin was exposed during a period of low water coinciding with the famine of the First World War. The same happened in 2018 during the summer drought. Reset news. Supply shocks, commodities and the dollar, by Seth Carpenter, chief global economist at Morgan Stanley, Recessionary clouds are gathering globally. China's economy contracted. The US recorded a technical recession. The flow of natural gas to Western Europe is restricted. In the last 3 months, we have revised down our global growth forecast to 2.5% in 2022. We are approaching a bearish scenario. Is a global recession coming? A Falcon 9 rocket launches 46 more Starlink satellites into orbit. Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, and other billionaires are funding a search for rare minerals buried under Greenland's ice to build electric cars and batteries. Uri Geller creates the world's youngest micronation with flag, constitution, and anthem on his football pitch-sized private Lamb Island, one of 3 rocky islands in the fourth of Scotland's North Berwick coast. Geller also offers citizenship, with all proceedings going to Save a Child's Hut, an Israeli charity that treats children with heart conditions around the world. Religion is gaining center stage on the US political agenda. A man drives his burning car into the Capitol and kills himself. As officers approached him after he drove his burning car into the Capitol, he shot himself, according to the police account. More than 72,000 evacuated as Typhoon Miari hits Japan. Taiwan detects Chinese fighter planes and military vessels around it shortly before the visit of a US delegation to the island of Formosa. Kissinger in quotes, "We are on the brink of war with Russia and China over issues that we partly created. The former Secretary of State believes the situation is due to circumstances that Washington helped to create," in quotes, without any concept of how this is going to end or what it's supposed to lead to. Salman Rushdie will lose an eye, have nerves severed in one arm, and his liver was also stabbed and damaged. Rushdie remains hospitalized in critical condition, but no longer needs a ventilator. British police are investigating threats against the Harry Potter author for her support on Salman Rushdie. Car crashes and burns into Arlington restaurant, injuring 14 people. Justice authorizes Idaho to ban almost all abortions. Joker's second budget will double that of the original film. Saudi oil company Aramco hit record revenues boosted by high crude oil prices. A fire in an Egyptian church causes tragedy in the Coptic community. The Taliban government dispersed a women's demonstration in Kabul with gunfire. The world seeks to finally conclude a treaty to protect the high seas. A bio-engineered cornea made from pigskin is created that could restore sight to millions of people. During the pilot test, 14 of the 20 participants who were implanted with the cornea regained their sight, 14 of them completely blind. Americas. Mexico sounds the alarm and deploys the army to the north of the country in the face of escalating violence. Mexican authorities blame a cartel for the day's violence in Baja California. Relatives of trapped miners in Mexico call for help from abroad. The Mexican army intercepts an aircraft with more than 400 kilos of cocaine. A fragment of the Metropolitan Cathedral of Mexico is detached due to an earthquake. A low-pressure area in the Gulf of Mexico is being washed as it heads towards Texas. The Stay in Mexico program may be over, but it's not the end of border obstacles. Lasso declares state of emergency in Guayaquil after an attack with several victims in the Cristo del Consuelo sector. The Ecuadorian president has also ordered the transfer of a contingent of the national police and the armed forces to control the areas of greatest criminal activity and catch those responsible for the attack. Argentina will send 7 tons of humanitarian aid to Cuba to combat the consequences of the fire in Matanzas. In Argentina, the week was marked by alerts and protests against the rise in inflation, which reached 7.4% in July. This is the highest rise in the last 20 years. Meanwhile, the year-on-year rate soared on 71%. Faced with this panorama, the President Alberto Fernández assured that his administration is making efforts to resolve the problem. Shining Path leaders seriously injured in a clash with the Peruvian army. 2 officers were also reported dead on Friday. Pedro Castillo promises justice after the death of military officers in the fight against the Shining Path. Gustavo Petro sets out his government program a week before assuming the presidency of Colombia. Torrential rains in Venezuela leave 1,000 people affected. Protests in Caracas to demand the return of Venezuelan assets held abroad. These include national gold reserves held in London. A 4.6 magnitude earthquake shakes southern Peru without causing damage. The president of Peru thanks Argentina, Bolivia, Ecuador and Mexico for their support. Flights cancelled and delayed in Ecuador due to the spread of ash from the Sangay volcano. The arrest of a bishop in Nicaragua increases tension with the Vatican. The OAS condemns Nicaragua for repression against the church, NGOs and the press. El Salvador records 8 days of August without homicides, according to police and Bukele. Brazil's Electrobras reduced its profit by 45% in the second quarter. Bolsonaro marches again with evangelical groups 50 days before the elections. Bolsonaro downplays FBI operation against Trump. Spain. Earthquake of magnitude 5.4 felt in the area of the Gulf of Cádiz. Instability and rain in central Spain, Cantabrian area and Pyrenees. 12 Spanish regions on heat and thunderstorm alert, with the Valencian region on red alert. The scorching heat persists in the Mediterranean, but with overnight relief in the country. At least 1 dead and 40 injured at the Medusa Festival in Cullera, Valencia, when structures collapsed in the wind. What is a thermal burst? A warm blowout occurs when precipitation evaporates on its way to the ground as it crosses a layer of dry air in a context of high temperatures. This causes the surrounding air to cool and become denser, which causes it to descend to the surface at a much faster rate than expected. A thermal outburst is also accompanied by a sudden rise in temperature and usually affects small, very localized areas. The Zamora fire is brought under control after 28 days, but others flare up. More than 100 troops are working to extinguish a fire in Jumilla, Murcia. 1,500 evacuated from 7 municipalities due to the fire in Añón del Moncayo, Zaragoza. Cumbres Mayores, Huelva resigned to living 22 hours at a time without running water. Bonastre in Catalonia lives with only 4 hours of water a day. Drought threatens tourism and agriculture at the Viñuela Reservoir in southern Spain. Labor slavery in Spain. The right to digital disconnection continues to be a pending issue in the vast majority of Spanish companies, with a work culture that continues to be marked by presentism in an increasingly connected environment from which workers don't escape in summer either. Seafood tourism and fishing tourism are gaining ground in Spain and exceeding the figures for 2019. A 33-year-old resident of Beasain, hospitalized in Greece in critical condition after suffering a beating on the island of Santorini. The incident took place last Thursday night when four young men aged 16, 18, 19 and 20 beat him to rob him. Europe. Measures to encourage water saving in the face of extreme drought in France. Lower temperatures and rain help to control fires in southwest France. Poland says too much salt could be to blame for the Oder River environmental catastrophe. A train strike causes several restrictions on rail transport in the UK. Norway calls the walrus Freya, a wild celebrity that attracts tourists to Oslo. Ukraine. 2 more ships leave Ukraine with thousands of tons of grain. Ukrainian farmers and workers go out to harvest despite the threat of bombs. Ukraine attacks strategic bridge over the Dnipro River. Russia advances in the Donbass despite the attribution of almost 6 months of campaigning. Russia takes control of eastern Spetsky and attacks Kramatorsk. Moscow's offensive in Donetsk continues at a slow pace after being stalled by Ukrainian resistance. In addition, new attacks were recorded near the Zaporizhia power plant. Explosion in a market in Armenia's capital, with dozens of victims. That's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends.